Hello, in this short demo we'll boost the available disk space in a default deployed ONTAP 9.9.1 simulator. After a default install in VMware you will have 28 disks of 1 GB in total. 3 disks will form the root aggregate and the other 25 disks will be available for data aggregates. But we need more space, so we can remove the unused data disks and replace them by creating larger disks. And since the maximum number of disks in a simulator is 56, we can create 53 disks for data aggregates. And that will give us more than 350 GB in total for a single node. So we're in the cluster shell and first list all of the disks that are part of an aggregate. And as we see, there's only 3 disks which are in the root aggregate. We should make sure that we do not touch those disks because that will break the root aggregate and thus the complete setup. So we make sure we recognize these 3 disks later on by getting the serial number of each disk. Now we will have to work in the system shell, so we go to the diag mode and then we unlock the diag user. We set the password for that user and then we log into the system shell, which will give us Unix. First we sudo to start a bash shell as root user. And then we cd to the disk directory where we'll find our 1 GB disks. Then we create a file that contains all of the disks and some other files. We open that file in an editor and remove the other files. And since the root disks are the first 3 disks, we make sure we remove them from that file as well. And if you're not sure, please compare the serial numbers that we listed earlier. Now to remove all of the remaining disks you can of course do that in multiple ways, but I will simply use a for loop to delete all non-root aggregate disks like this. So I list all my disks and see I've only got 3 root aggregate disks left, which is perfect. Now we have to remove the reservations file, otherwise the system will get confused about the available disks and refuse to boot, so don't forget that. Next thing we do is make sure that the shell file resembles the actual situation. So we also remove all the non-root disks from that file. Now to create the new disks we cd to the sim dev directory and then run the vsim make disks-h command to get a list of the possible disks we can pick from. Now number 36 has the size and the speed that we want. So we run the vsim make disks command again and connect the disk to adapter 0 with type 36 and create 53 disks in total, and then enter. The disks have been created and the shell file is updated. So now we can reboot the virtual machine. And after it's rebooted we log into the cluster shell and assign all disks to the node. That will change the new disks into spare disks and we create a data aggregate and use 53 disks for that aggregate. And when we list our aggregates we see we've got a very nice aggregate of some 350 GB. And we're done.